So, question and answer time. Does our speakers come forward, please? So I was told just as I arrived about 5 minutes before this session that there's a poll app running and people are populating their questions, and I've still yet to work out how that all works, but we'll try and sort of find our way through that. How does it work? Okay. Help if I have my glasses on. Toby, would the resistance of Knighton's trees to Pteropsis predation stay evident if planted as a genetic monoculture? Is it just preferential feeding due to beetle tastes?
Is this on? In the experiment we did, we had the genetic groups I was talking about. So we had about 180 families planted, and included in that would have been the 30 or so that Southwood export plant. So I don't think if you reduce the number down from 180 to the 25 or 30 that Southwood use, I don't think you would have seen a different result. We don't have, the deployment population is around 30, so I think there would have been variation, good and bad. It's Tara was saying we did find different groups clustering out, which wasn't on my slide. But it's early days. We'd like to do a second assessment just to confirm that having left the beetles there over winter, we'll get a much bigger result. So, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Here's another question for you, Toby. Are you considering native species as an alternative breeds for the different wood properties and products and diversification?
Not in this current funding round, but in the previous funding round, I have done progeny tests for Totara and Kaikatea, but there's nothing in this current funding round.
Here's a comment for you, Brent. Many thanks for your outstanding leadership with the reshaping of all aspects of RBBC. You have RBBC and the industry all very aware of what is required in the journey we are on. Cheers. Someone put that up. Brent might have put that in himself, eh? So again to you, Brent, how should the industry address the issues of diversity deficit across different forestry organisations? So that comes back to pretty much your last slide.
Good question. So firstly, thanks for the previous comment, whoever that was. So diversity, really interesting one. Primarily, this is all about leadership in this space, and I think at an individual organisation level, private organisations, you're either buying into this change and this movement, or you're not, and that'll be driven really from the top down in your organisation. It is pointless, and there's a lot of business case and research lurking around New Zealand now to support this statement, but it is pointless coming up with a statement in your organisation that says we will aim to be more diverse in 20 years. That in itself doesn't go far enough. All you'll find is you'll arrive there in 20 years, you won't have achieved what you might have thought you were going to achieve, and you'll wonder where it all went wrong. This stuff actually needs to be really hard-baked into your strategies. What I mean by that, I went on a course recently, and one of the participants on the course was a senior manager from Westpac Banking Corporation, and they've just achieved across their organisation a gender diversity balance of 50-50, and they got there much, much faster than they thought they might. But they only got there because they actually set targets and quotas within their organisation. That will be anathema to a lot of people in this room. The one area that they really, really struggled to recruit females into within their organisation was IT. IT as a sector is dominated by males. So tactically their approach was to go out to universities and basically recruit every female graduate that they could get their hands on and put structures around those young women within their organisations to protect them and make sure that they thrived. And that's the sort of thing that you're talking about, affirmative action that'll allow you to achieve your goals. Just the simple statement that we aim to be more diverse just simply won't cut the mustard. So what do we need to do as organisations? A, it's got to be embraced at the highest level of your organisation, and then B, you've got to have some really specific strategies hardwired into your policy. Otherwise you won't affect any change whatsoever.
Yes, thank you, Brent. I suppose it comes down to the leadership, as Brent says, from the chairman through his chief executive and driving those changes, otherwise they won't happen.
It's actually really interesting. Just if you look across our sector, there's plenty of women in the sector, but the area that we really, really struggle with is operations. And operations tends to be the pathway through to higher honours in any of our organisations at sort of C-suite level and senior executives. So why we have trouble in that particular area, I don't know. We might make a really interesting case study for someone at some stage, I think. But there's certainly something that needs to be looked at.
Thank you, Brent. Question for Craig. Automation in nurseries is capital intensive. Overseas nurseries are large operations. Are our nurseries of sufficient scale to support this level of investment?
Thanks, that's a great question. I guess we have to look at two sides. What are the opportunities, what are the limitations? And I think probably the first thing to recognise is that there are limitations to the industry. Can we afford not to do it in terms of labour supply issues and things like that? So I think probably increasingly we have seen in horticulture in general some of the bigger players getting bigger, filling more of that gap with this kind of automation. And so we can probably see a lot more of that, but there's no reason why, so looking at those mechanised automated planters for bare root production, that should be prohibitively expensive. They're not hugely complex pieces of equipment. They're not very expensive compared to some of the other automation you might see in a containerised facility. And there's also opportunity for service providers, just like you get somebody in to come and bale and harvest and bale grass on your farm. There's no reason why you can't contract somebody in, and that could be their business. So no, I don't think it'll be a hugely limiting thing. I think it's something we have to look at.
Yep. Craig, can plants from mini pots go straight out to planting?
Yes, they could. If the conditions were absolutely perfect and ideal, and very similar to what you might have in your nursery with frequent rain and moderate temperatures, theoretically, I suppose it's possible. It's just very, very risky. That sort of a volume of growing media doesn't carry enough water to hold that plant for more than a few days without rain. So I wouldn't advise it. I mean, theoretically possible, but I certainly wouldn't advise it. Certainly, when we start moving up, and a lot of the eucalyptus around the world is grown in fairly small cavities, about 60 millilitres or 60 cc's. So that certainly is doable. If you're thinking about a small plug, yes, those are doable. At the moment, very successfully producing radiata in 90 cc containers and establishing very well out in field. So you're probably looking at more a small plug rather than a mini plug, I think.
What about, sorry, this is my own question. So historically, there's been challenges around getting somatic emblings out to the forest with a break at the root collar of those small plants after they've been deployed directly through as an SE plant. How do you think we will overcome that problem?
May I answer?
Jan is going to hijack.
I think that understanding better germination, that we really have to focus more on germination. We have to learn from nature, and if we understand how germination really works with somatic embryos, then I strongly believe that we would be able to go with somatic embryos or emblings into really nursery and then out to forest.
Well, it's something we need to test.
Yes, and this is going to be also a very important part of partnership project. Yeah.
Okay. Toby, when will the assessment of the hybrid cypresses take place?
So the original hybrids we germinated had growth and form, and then went to 2 cycles of propagation. Through various collaborators, we have large blocks of these new 12 release clones growing on. They are somewhere between 4 and as young as 2 at the moment, so we're still a few years away from measuring sort of large block performance, but before the end of this current program, and we've just gone past halfway, we will do wood properties on the 12 we have released. But, you know, everything's still quite young, so we just have to wait.
Okay, so not sure how long we've got for this question and session, but are there any other final questions before we sort of wrap up here? I know lunch is pending. Hamish?
There's a lot of interest species have been shown in Abies grandis as a possible backup species for radiophyllum, something terrible could happen with description proposing. Do you agree with that? And
The way our funding cycle works is once a year we put ideas through to members of the TST, and then they go up to the PSG. So all of this year is currently locked in. So if there was support to do some work on Grandis, a work plan would have to be formulated and discussed at the TST, and then go up to the PSG for the final sign-off. So quite often we put more work plans in than there is funding, and it has to be balanced across the group of species I was talking about, the drylands component, and then there's a wood processing component. So yeah, if there was a good work plan, the TST could discuss it for the next financial year. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it would be competing with other people's proposals.
Okay, let's just wrap it up there, and thank you very much, all our speakers. If we can just sort of show our appreciation. And I think Russell must have something to say, so we'll get him back up. Cheers.
Good. Thanks very much, Dean and speakers this morning. We're going to break for lunch. I just wondered if I could get Angus and Jason and the speakers for this afternoon, if you could just come up for a couple of minutes before lunch, and just a couple of things I want to touch base on for this afternoon session. So thanks very much. And we've shot over time a bit, so if we could shorten up the lunch. We don't want to run late. We don't want to run late this afternoon because I know you've all got flights and that to catch. So if we could be back here and ready to go by 1 o'clock. Thank you.